All right, welcome back, you guys, to a new episode of the Beyond the Wrestling Gear podcast, where we don't just talk about wrestling, but we go beyond the wrestling gear. And today we have one half of the Puerto Rican Hound Dogs, Damian. Welcome, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good, good, man. We were just chatting it up out here before we started the podcast, and we kind of covered a couple interesting topics that I'm interested in. Like as I said earlier, I'd like to start out with your how did you get into wrestling and what motivated you to kind of make that transition to become an actual wrestler, you know?
Yeah, so what got me into wrestling was like someone who inspired me was actually my dad, Rafael Gonzalez. I grew up watching wrestling. I grew up going to his shows. He always tells me stories about when he started in IWA in Puerto Rico. So now watching him, he wrestled for companies like WXW. He's been in the ring with a lot of the Samoans, with guys like Sean Maluda, Haku. If I'm correct, I believe he's been in the ring with Tama Tonga and Tonga Lao, like when they first started back in, I think they started in '08. I'm not sure when they
That's
started.
really cool.
I was like really young, so I kind of remember, kind of don't, you know. And then I've watched my dad go travel even to the UK, which was pretty cool to see him travel out of the country. And now we're just here tagging as a wrestling as a tag team together, which is really cool. But yeah, what inspired me the most was my dad, and I was like, man, I want to do exactly what he's doing, and if not, to be better, you know?
Yeah, and that's pretty unique that you get to tag with your father because there's not very many tag teams or parents in the wrestling business with their kids, actually wrestling alongside them. Most of the time they're retired.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people, and every time someone's found out, like, hey, that they go, that's your dad. And I was like, is that shoot? And I was like, yes, that's a shoot, my dad. And he's like, oh, they're like, that's pretty cool to tag with your dad, you know? It's like, yeah, it's something I've over the years when I grew up, I've always dreamed of doing was tagging with my dad and traveling to places, even out of state, you know. I would love to just travel out of state with my dad, you know. I just like traveling with him, going and being able to tag with him is amazing.
I'm sure it's a blessing because time is so precious and time is limited,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
anything you do. So actually, now that you mention it, another father son tag team that popped up to my head was Ray and Dominic. That really reminded me of
Yeah.
them. You know, would
Yeah.
you one day see yourself in that stage where like one of the major companies like TNA, AEW with your dad like tag teaming at least like one match or multiple matches?
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that, you know. Never say never. It could happen. Any opportunity could come your way. It could happen in the next few years. You never know. But yeah, I could see that happening. If he'd still be wrestling by then, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really, really cool to see, like just the experiencing opportunity,
To
to in
experience it, yes, it would be amazing.
front of a crowd. Yeah, like and you mentioned Puerto Rico earlier. How do you feel about Puerto Rico finally being represented by WWE during a PLE like Backlash
I thought
earlier
it was
this year?
great. I thought it was great. Seeing them doing a PLE in Puerto Rico is amazing, especially guys like with Damian Priest, who's a Puerto Rican himself. That's really awesome to see. And I hope they do that again, if you want me to be honest, you know, because the fans over there, from the stories that I've heard, they love wrestling. I've heard so many stories from a lot of people there. It's crazy.
So were you originally trained by your?
Yes, my dad trained me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you were able to work alongside him and alongside I'm assuming the wrestlers that he was aligned to, that he wrestled
Yeah, I've
with
seen
and
quite a
he's
few
he's
people
known.
that he's, you know, I've actually, actually going to some shows that are running here. The guys that fly from Puerto Rico here, I've met a few of them, but they're all really cool guys, and my dad always talks about them all the time.
Yeah, it's always good to have that crew, that support system and
Yeah,
for your mental health, especially in wrestling when you're traveling back and forth and going from show to show and town to town. I'm sure it takes a toll on you, you know.
yeah, yeah. There'll be days where we get home super, super late. but that's part of wrestling, and it's all worth it in the end.
Yeah, it is all worth it, and it's worth it in the way of, you end up probably moving up in a different company, or someone might seek for you to be a part of their show,
Yeah,
or they'll book you to win a title, a championship.
yeah,
Yeah, speaking about you and like, I wanted to kind of pick out your style because I was watching a few of your videos, and it reminds me of Ricochet a little bit, like all the high flying, all the
yeah.
spots and
Um, yeah, I like to do a lot of high flying stuff, but I try to save those for when they mean something for like the big shows.
yeah, yeah, because you don't want to, like I've heard this saying before. If you do something too much, then it takes the excitement out of it. Like, I don't know about you. It's like with AEW, for example. One of the things that I feel, I mean, this is my opinion, that I feel it's flawed, is they have too much blood every single show. Somebody's got to bleed every single show,
Yeah, yeah. Someone's always bleeding over there.
and like it takes the mystique out of it, and you don't want that.
Yep.
Yeah, just like with everything, moderation.
hmm
Don't
They
go
say
overboard with it.
less is more.
Mm-hmm. Less
Saying
less is more.
less is more.
Or more bang for your buck. When you go out there and to the big shows and put on something impressive.
Yeah, yeah. And it took me a while to learn that too, but over the years that I've been wrestling, I've sort of now understand it a little bit more.
When did you start training for wrestling? At
Uh,
what
So I
age?
started at the age of 16 training, and I didn't have my first official match until I was about 18. So I was like a sophomore in high school and then a senior when I started, and it took 2 years for me to actually get the okay to have my first official match.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So they prepped you really well, and just to get ready and get out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? It's insane how wrestlers like Jeff Hardy, they started so early, like 15, 16, in the ring. Yeah, and like they like, I remember watching, I think, a documentary with him and Matt was mentioning that they kind of like low key told him that he was
Yep.
18, but he had to,
Yep. They
he
had to
said
like.
Jeff could wrestle.
Yep.
And yet here we are, one of the top tag teams in the whole world, legends of business. And we we mentioned all these different things. Now, since I mentioned earlier off camera about the traveling and everything else, how important it is for you to learn, different languages, the cultures and stuff, going from country to country, from town to town. Like you
Um.
mentioned, you go to Puerto Rico, but then it's hard for you to kind of.
So I've actually never been to Puerto Rico, but there's companies here in Florida. Like there's one in Kissimmee that I go to with my dad and I wrestle for. A lot of those workers are from Puerto Rico and they started in Puerto Rico. And one of them came here and started his own company. And he brings talent from Puerto Rico. And some of them they can't speak English. And this is where a lot of even some of them who do, and my dad, including my mom too, they're like, you need to learn Spanish, get that, because you're gonna be in the ring with people who don't understand English whatsoever. You know, they'll probably understand little words, that they catch on to, but some of them don't understand English. They only understand Spanish. They can only speak Spanish.
Like the basics, and I mean, as long as I feel like you don't necessarily have to speak it, but at least understand it,
Yeah, yeah.
like.
So me, I try to speak a little bit of Spanish. I don't. I always speak English, but if they don't understand it and I can't get the words, I'll ask my dad, "Hey, how do you say this?" And he'll tell me, and then I'll talk to the person and say them to him in Spanish.
Yeah, and it's also crucial, especially when you're in the ring doing specific moves or
Yep.
calls,
hmm
for the match. You don't wanna have that miscommunication.
For sure.
But it's incredible how you see people like Pentagon, Shinsuke, or
Yeah,
Phoenix.
a lot of guys
They're
that are
flawless
from
at
different
what they
countries.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if they're wrestling with somebody that doesn't know their language, they communicate so well.
Yeah.
Like just now we have, also you're thinking about Julia and then Stephanie McCurr too, and they're really good at in the ring as well.
Oh
Despite
yeah.
the language, barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, they're really good at what they do, like you said, and they're from a different place.
Sorry, that was my dog in the.
You're all good.
Yeah, he just heard somebody. He wanted to be part of the show. So have you won any titles at the promotions you wrestled?
Actually, yes, I've won the WWE Proving Ground Tag Team titles with my dad in WWE at a Battle for the Belts last year, and I didn't think about it at the time, but we were like their only father and son tag team there, and that's ever won a tag team championship together, which was
That's awesome.
actually a dream of mine, and we made it happen. So it was a really, really awesome, cool experience to have a championship title with my dad.
Yeah, I mean, nothing can beat anything else, besides winning a world title, at some point.
Yeah, and I've even won titles with my dad in other companies as well. Um, but my favorite one and most memorable one was at WWN Battle for the Belts.
Yeah, that one was that the first one you ever won together?
No, we've won some before. Like my first one was in Sarasota, but they only had two shows and they haven't ran since, so I don't know about that. But the ones that I again, the most memorable one that means something to me that we both wanted to accomplish together was at WWN.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Like, it's always good to see heartwarming moments, especially when you get to share it with your family.
Yeah,
Winning a championship.
yeah, by far the coolest moment I've had while wrestling with my dad.
So what are some of your dream matches? Who would you like to face in the ring? Anywhere, any place,
In the indies or just in general?
just in general, anywhere.
I'll say right now in the indies, um, I would love to work Sean Maluda. Sean Maluda. He's a guy I want to work. Who I also met at WXW. He's also had some matches with my dad. And then anyone who's signed like on in I want to say AJ Styles would be a big
Yeah,
one I would love to wrestle.
legend in the business.
Yes, yes. Always loved watching him as a kid.
Yeah, he's always been good at high spots and really getting the crowd involved in the
Yeah,
matches.
yeah,
I'm excited to see him become a trainer because I've heard rumblings of him getting into hopefully training wrestlers in WWE once he retires.
uh, yeah. That'd be cool.
Pass that knowledge on to the next generation.
Yeah, I have a list of wrestlers I'd love to be in the ring with, especially in the indies. It's like a long list.
And and I was just talking to a friend of mine about this the other day. Is having that special connection with anybody, whether it's like an indie wrestler or major companies, is so important because you both kind of help each other out in a
Yeah,
sense of you're building each other up for the next step. Whether it's going to the next company or potentially running for a championship title match or
hmm,
even getting an opportunity for an even bigger match with somebody even more notable.
yeah,
Because now you're seeing that the indies are starting to pick up more as far as like bigger names.
yeah, yeah.
Like now you have Shelton Benjamin out there, you have Matt Riddle out there who I interviewed last year.
Okay,
Yeah, I got the opportunity to interview him last year at River City Wrestling Con. I went there last year
that's pretty cool.
in St. Augustine, and that's where I met. Actually, I met Sticks like way before that. Yeah, we finally met in person last year. We had a blast. It was hilarious. Like we were. He helped me. Sticks is so instrumental in my podcast wrestling podcast venture because he taught me this. He said, start small and work your way up. For somebody notable, because he saw I was struggling a little bit trying to get people on, even if they were like small. But he's like, dude, just be yourself, and if you're yourself, you're genuine and you're a good person, and I know you. You're not one of those pushovers that just looking for information.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
dirt sheets, like they say. You know.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I've been able to interview a lot of different indie wrestlers. Some of them I'm actually friends with in real life, and actually I'm friends with Vito too. You
Who?
know Vito from WB.
Yeah.
He used to be in a Yeah, I'm friends with him too. I met him in person last year
Oh,
as
that's
well.
awesome.
Yeah, so I mean the thing that I was told is, everybody's just a human being. Whether you're a
Yep.
wrestler or you're not a wrestler, treat everybody with the same respect, and they're at the end of the day they're human. So where do you see yourself in the next few years down the line, like maybe 5 or 10 years?
I would say some, hopefully, knock on wood, sign as which is the goal, but if not, make wrestling a living, be able to travel the world and to continue doing what I love doing. But mostly, hopefully, I see myself getting signed somewhere.
Yeah, one of the things that I would like to see, I don't know about you, that you would agree with, is hopefully down the line they start like a union or something for these indie wrestlers so that they have some kind of insurance,
Yeah,
considering that they get hurt, all the time. They
yeah,
have some
it
sort of
happens.
backup because it's like with WWE, I think they have a downside guarantee where
Hmm.
if the wrestler gets hurt, they get paid a certain amount of money. They get paid a fixed amount of money. So they'll like say for example, the contract is 250,000.
Hmm.
But then you're on the road and you wrestle and you make all these bonuses and merchandise sales and whatnot. But then you
Hmm.
get hurt and you're not making that extra money. But
No.
you have your downside guarantee, so you're
Yeah.
still making something.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Even I've gotten hurt too, and it's not fun. I've broken an ankle. My right ankle I broke. Like this was like I was just starting. I want to say I was like maybe a few months in. So when
Man,
I started in October 16th. Had my first match back in 2022. And then in April I was in a triple threat, and we had this guy. We were giving him a power bomb, but when he landed on my leg, on my ankle, and it just popped. You know, and I was so worried, because I thought it was a lot worse. I thought I had to get screws or something to, keep it in place. But luckily, it was just a fracture, and the doctors took care of it, and I was back in 4 months later.
that's awesome. You recovered pretty quickly, considering that most of those injuries take a good bit.
Yeah, yeah, they do.
Would you ever see yourself as a trainer yourself, like training your own crop of wrestlers, or you just travel and wrestle like for your career?
Right now, I don't see myself as a trainer, and later on, I just see myself right now as a wrestler. Traveling, like you said, help. Like when my dad trains his students, I'll tell them what I was taught, in the basics. But as of right now, I do not see myself as a trainer later on. Right now, I might say that now, but over the years, I might change my mind and see it.
You do what you love the most at the beginning, and then at the end, make that decision of what you want to do next.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Damien, where can my followers find you?
On social medias,
Social medias, website.
on social media, you can find me on Instagram as my Instagram is Big DJ 13. You can find me, and you can also find me on Facebook, which is Damian Gonzalez, and that's mainly the socials I use. I have a TikTok, but I don't use it anymore.
Yeah, it's TikTok's a really weird app. Like, you see so many weird things. This is a whole other conversation we could say for later. But
Yeah.
man, yeah, it's
But yeah, you
very,
can
but it
find
helps
me.
with the engagement. Like in terms of like the reels that I put for the podcast, like
Yeah,
brings it out there.
yeah. But those are the main socials I use that you can find me on.
But I forgot to ask you, do you have any things you do outside of the ring that you enjoy doing? Like, do you partake in?
Not really. Usually, I just go to the gym, or I'll just when I'm doing nothing, I'll relax at home.
Work on your craft and everything?
Yeah, if anything, I'll go and train with my dad here and there. train with some of the
Yeah, I got.
students, even with some of his old students, because some of his old students, when he first became a trainer, hey man, what you doing? You want to go train? And I'll be like, yeah, why not? You know?
It's like the opportunity, right, to get better,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
really important in the ring. Work at
yeah.
it.
I know. When I first started, I was like around 16. I always wanted to be in the ring like every day. I'm going to be completely honest with you. It was almost every day I wanted to ring, but the days we were trained, it was like three to 4 days a week we would train,
That's a
and
lot. Yeah.
from like 5 to 9, you know.
Hey, but you grinded it out. You kept training, and look at you now,
Yeah, yeah,
traveling, being a champion with your dad, and making a difference here in the wrestling community.
yeah,
And that's what we always hope for.
definitely, 100%.
Damian, thank you for joining us on the show.
Hmm.
And if you guys want to listen to this podcast, you can go on the YouTube channel. Eventually, it'll be on Spotify. When I sit down and actually upload the episodes,
Awesome.
and you can see the reels on TikTok, Instagram at Beyond the Wrestling Gear Pod. And as always, until next time, y'all. Thanks again, Damien.
No, thank you.